Data. It is absolutely everywhere you look in football and at Norwich City at the moment. It's all we hear. Data, data, data. From Ben Napper, from Liam Manning, from the Atanasios. We are going data mad in football. We are going data mad at Norwich City. And I like that. I like the fact that you have evidence-based decision making, right? I think that's a good thing. But data is only useful when you're applying it well and you're applying it based on your philosophies. It's been really interesting this season and also the last couple of seasons to where Norwich City are kind of going, the identity they're trying and ultimately failing to form, and how we adapt in this modern era of football when you're going up against bigger clubs with bigger budgets and you're trying to break through the noise of the Championship. It's been a really difficult few years at Norwich City. There's no getting away from that. And it feels as if we're confused. It feels as if we're struggling to stick to an idea, to a philosophy, and the thinking isn't lined up from department to department. And that's a massive concern because what happens then is a really disjointed system that ultimately doesn't work and fails to meet your objectives. I was reading a really good article from Ben Lee, who runs the account NCFC Analysis on Twitter. I will leave his link in the description. He is well worth a follow. He's incredibly bright, and he writes a weekly column on the Pink 'Un, which again is well worth subscribing to. I pay a couple of quid a month or whatever it is. And it's great value. And I think we should all do our bit to support local press and media surrounding Norwich City. And the read was pretty damning, I must say. And look, this isn't really an opinion. It's the data that's been presented. And I guess you can form an opinion based off of that. But the evidence shown in this shows that Norwich are struggling. And Norwich is struggling to make decisions that align with their values at the moment. Now, I guess the context around this is we have struggled for the last probably 4 years, to meet the objectives that we set ourselves. Daniel Farke was the last successful head coach here. He won back-to-back championship titles. Yes, failed in the Premier League. We've been over that. There was context to wrap around it. Part failing from a managerial duty and part failing from a support duty. It's never just one person's fault. I do believe that. And then we pulled the handbrake up and went to Dean Smith, and that didn't work. So we pulled the handbrake up again and went to David Wagner, and that didn't work. And then we went and changed again to Johannes Torup, and that didn't work. And now we're with Liam Manning, and at this moment in time, that's not working either. But the worrying thing is all of those head coaches have incredibly different philosophies on the way that they want to play football. Yes, David Wagner and Johannes Torup may have had some similarities, but not really too much. Daniel Farke to Dean Smith, that's two extremes. And then also Johannes Torup to Liam Manning. That's a huge contrast as well. This article in particular looks at the last couple of seasons. This looks at Liam Manning compared to Johannes Torup. And ultimately, were the decisions around the sacking of Johannes Torup and the hiring of Liam Manning particularly aligned with what we're trying to do? Now, this is certainly not me, and I don't think this is what Ben was inferring, saying we shouldn't have sacked Johannes Torup. But what it does say is it's slightly confusing that we opted with a position with Johannes and then kind of have gone the other way with Liam Manning, and actually it's not working as well. Now, here you can see the kind of XG trends and the XGA trends, which I know some people don't love. I think it's how you apply it, and I think it's a good metric to broaden your horizons a little bit in terms of performances rather than just goals scored, because actually, Norwich City under Johannes Torup were excellent in creating chances. They were one of the best in the division at creating chances. What they weren't good at is converting those chances. They missed a hell of a lot of good chances. They hit the woodwork a hell of a lot. And as we get on to later, though they certainly weren't good at, were keeping chances out. So Liam Manning, compared to Johannes Torup, you'll see here, that is not good. That's all red. In terms of the XGA, we are not trending well. So Johannes Torup, and there's an interesting kind of point here, and I think this is a key point. You can look at the data. there is also a point which I guess is intangible, I guess, with this kind of stuff, and that's man management. Now, I think we could all agree that Johannes Torp's man management probably wasn't ideal. He, whether you like it or not, kind of kept Shane Duffy out of the side. He, I think, annoyed Jose Cordoba at times. Marcelino Nunez's performance level dropped off a cliff at a certain point as well, and you can kind of see that, and it goes from green to red pretty quickly. The dotted line there is when Liam Manning comes in. It was going okay. It fell off a cliff. We know that Johannes Torp's end to the season wasn't great, and I do think we got to a position where Johannes's tenure at the football club was kind of it was untenable by the end of it. But what Johannes Torp could get was his side creating chances. Liam Manning is unable to do that. And when you look at this graph here, this is where we're at the moment in terms of this season. Norwich are 4th from bottom in terms of expected goal difference. That is really concerning. And look, if you're wanting a video where I'm going, actually things are going to turn around, actually we're just underperforming where we're at the moment, this isn't the video for you. All of the data suggests that Norwich City are actually in a really poor spot and are battling in terms of where we're at with other relegation battling sides in Hull and Sheffield Wednesday and Derby. We are close to the bottom in terms of chance creation this season. It's not good at all. Compare that to last season. Norwich were about kind of, what was that, 9th, 8th, something like that. Leeds were far and away clear of expected goal difference, but Norwich were positive. They had expected goal difference of 9. There's not too many sides in there that were better than Norwich last season in terms of expected goal difference. The system has changed hugely, and that's almost one of the big concerns here is if you're Ben Napper and you're coming in and you're saying, I have a philosophy, I have a clear way of wanting to play football, I can't understand how you go from Johannes Torp to Liam Manning. And also then you have a position where the likes of Mate Jurisic and Ante Sirnats and Forsen and Manqua, players that you signed for the previous manager, almost become somewhat redundant. We've seen it so clearly with Ante Sirnats. He was, on the whole, okay, was fairly impressive. Yes, he wasn't living up to his £8.5 million price tag, but he had 10 plus goals and assists last season. His form is falling off a cliff this season round, and that's a real concern. Now, Nap will argue that players are signed less so for a manager but a system, and that's the problem. The systems aren't similar, and you've got a bunch of players that now aren't suited to this new system. So you're chopping and changing, and you've got this huge turnover and huge levels of turmoil each summer, which isn't great. There will be lots of people as well that are saying, Jack, actually Johannes was really unlucky to get sacked. They were performing fairly well on the whole, and they underachieved in terms of where they should have been in terms of performance levels. What we knew at Norwich last season was a drastic underperformance from the goalkeepers. We were by far and away the worst goalkeeping department in the Championship, by a long way. You can see from this table here, we were miles the worst in the division. And you compare that to this season, where Norwich actually have the second best goalkeeper in the division. Kovacevic comes out, I think, second in terms of kind of shot stopping this time around. So Kovacevic compared to Gunn and also George Long last season, it's a remarkable difference. And actually the points that Norwich have collected this season have largely been down to Vladan Kovacevic. They have given up loads of shots, loads of possession, loads of chances. And yes, there may have been a couple of mistakes from Vladan Kovacevic. The ones that stick in the mind are the goal that we conceded at Ipswich and also on opening day against Millwall. But of course he's going to make mistakes because of the sheer density of shots that's coming his way. If Norwich had had a Vladan Kovacevic last season, who knows? We may have been able to get, I'm not saying playoffs, but certainly higher up the table. So what I would say is go and give this piece a read. It's well worth a look. And this just for me reinforces the point. And it comes back to this point where it feels like Norwich are confused. As I said at the start of this video, I'm not saying that Johannes Torp shouldn't have been sacked from Norwich. There's no point going over old ground. But what does concern me is that he was sacked arguably for less reasons than Liam Manning has been sacked. And also, I'm not coming on here and saying that Liam Manning should be sacked. What I'm saying is there needs to be a degree of consistency in decision making. And I don't think we've got that at Norwich City at the moment. We are desperately seeking our identity, our philosophy. And I know they're buzzwords and I know they're fluffy, but it is vital for a football club to have. We saw it with Stuart Webber and Daniel Farke in those first few years. A recruitment, a playing style, and an identity around what we were trying to do. And ultimately, that is how you're going to get out of this division. And that's why Daniel Farke was so successful, and it continues to be successful with Leeds United. He was far from perfect. He had his flaws. But with him and Stuart Webber, there was a degree of joined up thinking. And my concern now is we've got this data and we keep using that buzzword of data, but we're not using it correctly. We're not inferring the correct things. We're not finding the little nuggets that make Norwich special with that data. We're just using numbers for the sake of numbers. You look at Jose Cordoba in terms of progressive passes, he's miles and away Norwich's best player this season from a defensive unit. But actually on the eye test, he's been really poor. It's concerning. Norwich are trending horrifically in terms of league performances this season on the numbers. And I think when you look at this and you go, Johannes got a little bit unlucky. Johannes, I think, was promised a 3-year project that ultimately wasn't kept. And we've gone to Liam Manning, and that's fine. And I think Liam Manning's a good coach, and he has done really well at the clubs he has been at. But what Liam Manning isn't is Johannes Torup. And Ben Napper apparently has a philosophy. I just don't know what that philosophy is at the moment, because the decision making are very contrasting decisions. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I apologise for this being slightly gobbledygook. I think my overarching feeling at the moment is I don't know what Norwich are trying to do. And I don't think the club know what they're trying to do. Of course, the ultimate is win football matches. But I don't think they know how to get to that point. The decision making in terms of hiring and firing has been confusing at the best of times. And there is no joined up pattern of thinking here. And that's really concerning for me. I think that will be very concerning for the Atanasios. And I think for the players, it's probably concerning as well, because they've gone from playing Johannes ball to Manning ball. What is that? I don't know. Head over and read the article. Give Ben a follow on Twitter. Well worth your time. And thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.